All right. Welcome, everyone. So October is Cybersecurity Month, and we're excited to have Robert Sparry here, who is the CEO of Dorset Connect, an IT managed service provider serving the Brandywine Valley since 1997. So cybersecurity is one of the most important topics we can understand. So we're really grateful to have Robert here sharing with us today about what we can do to protect ourselves and our personal information. So with that, Robert, I am very grateful to have you. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Elise. Glad to be here. Is my screen up? Can we see that?
Your screen is up and going.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to talk about cybersecurity. I know it's really boring and dry, but I think everyone knows by now that it's very important to at least get our level of security up a little bit where we can to protect ourselves from all the incredible number of attacks and ransoms that have been paid out. You don't want to be part of that story. We're going to leave a little time at the end for Q&A. Don't hesitate to ask questions as we go. I normally like to do these in person and have an interactive session. That's a little difficult in a remote environment. So if you'll type your questions into the chat box, Elise can let me know if there's anything I need to respond to in a timely fashion. All right, so for several decades, we've had antivirus and related software installed on every computer. That's the norm for protecting your machine. Is it enough? That's the real question for today. Is the basic security software that comes with your PC or is installed by your IT folks, is that enough? I mean, no one can guarantee that you're going to be 100% protected from a cyber attack. But we're going to talk about the things today that you can do to protect yourself. Every now and then I got to switch back to see if there's questions come in on a different screen. So I apologize for that little blip.
Oh, and
there.
don't worry, I'll interrupt you if there's any questions that come in.
Okay, very good. So there are basic levels of protection that all businesses need. For one, we've just mentioned the antivirus and other anti-malware software. That's the bare minimum. Then we have firewalls and network perimeter protection. Now, I would say, does everyone know what a firewall is by show of hands? So I'll assume that at least one person would like to have a good definition of what a firewall is. Every network has a router in it. A router connects two different networks. We usually think of the internet as the Wild West. The internet is where the bad guys are. Yeah, the good guys are out there too, but we're trying to protect ourselves from the bad guys. Then you have your local network. Sometimes you'll see it described as an LAN, a LAN. Local area network is where the good guys are. That's where the trusted equipment, where you might have printers, you might have servers, other computers, and other devices that are in your locally protected and trusted network can get to all of those resources. But if you want to get to the internet, you have to go through a router. And that router is often called a firewall because the firewall is a set of software rules that goes on top of the router, which adds additional protections, such as not letting the traffic from the bad guys to come in. And it allows the traffic from the good guys on your computer to go out. And you might say, well, how is it that, if I want to see some information from the internet and the firewall is blocking it, how does it get in? Well, when you initiate the conversation, the firewall says, okay, the good guy is asking for information. It sets up a talk channel and the responding system is going to come back through that established channel and the firewall will let it through. But the firewall is not going to allow conversations that are initiated from the outside to come in. So that's in general terms, that's what a firewall does. Now, another basic level of protection that everyone should have are unique secure passwords and multi-factor authentication. So first, the unique password is something that is a nuisance to many of us. You like to have a simple password that you use for Amazon and eBay and TikTok and your email. But it's really important these days to have different passwords for each of those systems, because once the bad guys get a hold of one password, you don't want them to have access immediately to all of your other systems. So it is important to have a different password for each system. Now, one way to make your passwords easier to remember, to use what's called passphrases. A passphrase might be something like, let me get out of here. And the let and the me and the get and out, you might take the first letter of each one of those words. So it's easy to remember the phrase, but you're just using certain letters from within that phrase. That's just a memory a trick to use. Something that's better than that is going to be a password vault. So there are many good, many free password vault protection systems out there that you can get. We use here at Dorset Connects, we use a system called LastPass. There's a free version, and then the paid version, which I think is only about $12 a year, allows you to synchronize all your devices, so you can get your passwords from your phone, from your computer, and those passwords are encrypted, and highly recommended to use a password keeper. This other thing, multi-factor authentication, MFA. Okay, show of hands, who knows what MFA means? Well, MFA is something that is supported by many applications. Any application that you have, like Gmail, Facebook, and email, if you have Office 365 from Microsoft, they support multi-factor authentication. So when you sign into your account, you're providing a username and a password. That's the first factor. A multi-factor, the second factor, is going to be a code that is sent from that system that says, okay, I know you've given me a good username and password, but I really want to get a second factor for you to verify your identity. And that might come in by way of a 6-digit code to your email. It might come as a text to your cell phone, or if you have an application on your phone, an MFA app on your cell phone, it might come there. Now, we highly discourage using your email as a multi-factor authentication source, because if your email is compromised, then the bad guys are going to be able to get that second factor to provide to the other system, and then they're in. So you really want to, at the very least, use a text system or get a multi-factor authentication app for your phone. Okay. I would say, are there any questions so far? Elise, you let me know if anything comes up.
No questions yet.
Okay.
That just means you're thorough.
All right. Is that what that means? Okay. So next, we have to decide, is this enough? And it's probably not. We know that we need to do more. Now, unfortunately, there's risk and cost versus reward and mandates. There's no one-size solution that fits all. You may experience physical security in your place of work. Maybe they require you to show an ID badge. You might have to use a key fob. You might have to punch in a code to get into a locked door. You might need to swipe a key card. These are physical security requirements that have been decided by your place of business or the office building you're in that are a minimum. And those security systems might be more pronounced, say, in a city like in Wilmington or Philadelphia, and not so much out in the suburbs, because of the risk determination that's been made. Same thing for cybersecurity. There's going to be a certain amount of risk and reward that you need to take into consideration as to whether it's worth putting in the additional security, at what additional cost. In addition to the cost of implementing any additional security measures is the risk to reputation that is associated with a breach. So if you never are breached, it's kind of like insurance. If you never get into an accident and you don't have insurance, then you saved a lot of money. But what if you do get into an accident? Then it's going to be important for you to have had that insurance. So you won't know until it's kind of too late if it was smart to get the insurance. It's same thing for risks to reputation if you're associated with a breach. If you do not take the measures to prevent a ransomware attack, a cyberware attack, and the other associated types of phishing scams. If there are ways to minimize that possibility, and those factors are inexpensive, then it's something that you should probably consider doing. If they're very expensive, then you maybe have to decide whether it's worth it or not. So the risk to finances is one thing. The risk to business operations is another. It's something that you have to decide internally. What would be the risk to your business surviving if it became known that you were a victim of a breach? And then there are the government mandates. These are not negotiable. You may be in a business like in a medical field or wealth management, and if you have to protect personally identifiable information, if you have to guard against HIPAA, we're all familiar with having to sign all these HIPAA forms when we go to see the doctor these days. So some of those requirements are getting more stringent. The insurance carriers are starting to require more IT cyber awareness training. They might be requiring a multi-factor authentication. You may not have any choice in this. And maybe you've got a vendor or a client that you do business with, and they may require that you fill out an IT security questionnaire and have minimum standards for the amount of protection that you have in place. Okay, questions?
All right. Actually, I do have a question.
Okay.
And I guess I feel like you're recommending these. This is actually my question is, a lot of our small businesses have limited staff resources and capacity. So I'm guessing you're going into those recommendations for like kind of the minimum viable needs.
Sure. So the next couple of slides are going to talk about what's recommended for everyone, what's recommended for those or for most businesses, and then we'll talk about what's recommended for those that have a heightened security awareness or cyber protection mechanisms. So the next three slides will cover those three things. How you might get help with those, I will. So for example, let's say we touch on something that might be of interest to your company, and you're small. Let's say you don't have many resources. You might say, well, what can I do as a small business owner? Those are the types of questions that we can help you with. Things that may be of little to no cost to you, or things that might take a few dollars a month to implement, especially if you're on something like Office 365, or something that might be more in a monitoring system that might cost $10 or $15 a month, that kind of thing. Okay. So for everyone, we do recommend some kind of centralized monitoring and management. Now, if you're a small company, you might say, well, we don't really have any. Well, if you have someone who's your IT guy, who does the upgrading of your computers, you might want to ask that person, are you looking at and monitoring that our systems are updated and patched? It's very important for you to have your computer updated with security patches when they come out, not 3 months later, not 6 months later, but in a timely fashion. And if no one is looking at it, then you're at increased risk by having known vulnerabilities that are not patched on your machine. That's how the bad guys exploit systems, is to look for those systems that are not patched. Same thing if you've got a cell phone and if you have an iPhone or an Android and you have an app store, the app store might show that there are badges, little icons that show how many updates. Maybe there's 30, 40 applications that can be updated. You should do that at least once a week, if not once every 2 weeks. Don't go for months and not update those applications. Those applications have updates to plug vulnerabilities, and you want to keep up with those. So it is important to have someone looking at your systems on a regular basis. An automated system is best, but at the very least, you should have someone who is going to look on a regular basis at whether your systems are patched. Another thing that we recommend pretty much for everyone is offsite air gap backups. Now, what does that mean? Well, first of all, offsite is pretty obvious. It means that the backup itself, once it's backed up, whatever system that is, whether it's just your own computer or your server at your office, to take that backup out of the building. And that could be done electronically just by having an offsite backup service, or maybe you've got a USB drive and you take that offsite. The main advantage to that is that if anything happens in your building, a fire, flood, etc., that you've got a backup that's offsite. But more important, that backup is not attached to the network. If the backup is attached to the network, it can be found and it can be encrypted just like your regular data. When the bad guys come in, when the hackers, the ransomware and cryptoware guys get in to your network, they do not announce themselves right away. They literally lurk and hang out looking for your backup systems. They want to see where all of your data is, and they want to find that and encrypt it so that you cannot recover from a ransomware attack. The best way to avoid paying a ransom and avoid being in the news with a breach is to be able to recover from an attack. And the way you recover from an attack is to have an unencrypted good backup. And the way to make sure that you've got that is to have an air gap between your network and the bad guys cannot actually remotely get to that data. Now, you might say, well, the bad guys, they can't possibly care about my data. I mean, I've got, I'm in the concrete business, or I'm in the t-shirt business, or whatever business I'm in. I may feel like the bad guys, what my customer data is not worth anything to them. They're not going to get any money for it, or if they do, it's really not worth anything. So why would they come and attack me? Because they know your data is important to you. You're right. They don't care about your data for them. They care about your data because you care about your data and you would be willing to pay them to get it back. That is the rationale for the ransomware and cryptoware attacks. And as long as they are successful and people pay the ransom, it's a good business model. So if you can avoid paying the ransom, you help the rest of our community in not making that a good business model. And maybe they'll go off and do something else. And the other analogy I might make is similar to when a bear is chasing you. The most important thing is for you to be able to run faster than your friends. So if the bear is going to catch someone, hopefully you running faster than your friends. Same thing with cybersecurity. If your network is more secure and it's hard to get into, the bad guys are going to leave you alone and go to the guy who is easier to get into, the guy who's not patched, the guy who doesn't have air gap backups. So you're helping yourself and you're helping the community by taking that measure. Another thing to do is security awareness training. People are the weakest link. We are our own worst enemy by being tricked into clicking links that go out to the bad guys that allow them to come in. Remember, the firewall is not going to stop you from going out. If you initiate that click to go to the bad site, the firewall says, well, you asked for it. I'm going to let you out. And then the bad guys can come in. That's where adding additional security software, things like Defender for Office 365. It used to be called Advanced Threat Protection, ATP. It will actually look at the links that you're clicking and go out and sort of detonate them in a sandbox, kind of make sure that they're not going to be in a bad place before they allow the return traffic to come in. So there are some things that you can do in terms of becoming better aware by taking some security awareness training and by adding additional software that looks at some of the phishing scams that are out there and blocks them before they come back in. And lastly here, you should get some documentation, some policies and procedures. Now, these may seem like a daunting task for a small business. It's not something you have to do right now, right this minute. But if you meet once a week, maybe take one of those meetings every month and take an hour with your leadership team and make a list of the things that you need to do. And take a small bite each month, and over the course of 3 months, 6 months, you'll find that you've made a lot of progress in protecting your business and in looking down the road at how you can improve your security posture. So I know it can seem a little bit overwhelming, but just take one bite of the apple, and then the next thing you know, you'll have it taken care of. Questions? Okay. Recommended for most businesses. Cyber insurance is really a must today. It's either an add-on to your current liability. It can be a standalone policy. This will provide the resources you need if a breach does occur. You still need backups that were not compromised, but at least your cyber insurance should assist you with the costs and the resources to recover from an event. Another thing that you want to have is encryption. Mobile devices should encrypt their data. That's so that if the device, like a laptop, is stolen, they can't just take the hard drive and plug it in and read all the data. If it's encrypted, that data is no good to them. And you should have your phones encrypted as well, but certainly your laptop should be encrypted. It's not as important to have your physical desktop computers in the office encrypted until you get rid of them. So what happens when you get rid of your old PC and you buy a new PC? If that old PC just goes out to the electronic recycling center and it's not encrypted, anybody can pull that hard drive and get the data. So even your local desktop machines should be encrypted so that when you do recycle them and they're out of your control, that data is still no good to the bad guys. You should have auditing and alerts. Again, you might say, well, how do I do that? That's something that may be beyond the skill level of your one-man shop guy, but it's the kind of thing that is out there. It's available. Getting auditing and alerts so that when things happen that you know about it, as opposed to you finding out about it because it's been going on for 3 or 4 days and you just notice something's not quite right. It's a lot better to have an alert that says, hey, someone has given themselves administrative privileges in our system. An alert that comes out, an email that comes out that says, hey, someone just gave themselves administrative privileges, and you can say, I know, that's okay. That's great. You know about it. But what happens if someone nefariously is giving themselves administrative privileges and you don't know it? That's where the auditing and alerts come in. And in addition to that, there are vulnerability scans that can be run. There are companies that do this for you. We don't do vulnerability scans because we feel like we are it's the fox guarding the hen house. If Dorset Connects is providing security for a business, we don't feel it's appropriate for us to do our own check on how good we're doing. A third party unbiased observer should do the scan and see how we're doing. That would be my recommendation. If in your business you've got your IT company, your managed service provider is also doing the vulnerability scans, you got to remember they're checking their own work. So that would be something to ask them about. Maybe you might want to have a third party do that scan. And then finally here, a security score review. So if you have Office 365, for example, Microsoft has a security review that you can see, and it's a good way to get an idea of the low-hanging fruit, the things that are easy to correct at little to no cost, and that will improve your score. And that's the kind of thing where over the course of a few months of meeting with your leadership team, you could say, hey, once a month, let's review our security score and let's pick a couple of things that we can improve. And then 3 to 6 months out, your security score is much higher. Again, you're running faster than your friends from the bear that's after you. Questions?
No questions yet.
Okay. Are you and I the only ones here?
No, we have other folks watching us too. You're on a bunch of different channels, but
okay,
I'll have
good.
questions for you at the end for sure.
All right, very good. Am I talking too fast?
No, you're doing fantastic. This is just a lot of really, really important information that I am watching and knowing that myself as a person is very vulnerable. So no, it's great.
Okay, very good. Well, next, there may be businesses that tend to be larger companies. Maybe they have an IT team, or you've got an internal IT department, or you've outsourced to a managed service firm, but you may decide that you're ready for the next level of protection. A SOC is a security operations center. It's a group that employs people and technology to continuously monitor events taking place on the network. And the good thing about that is, if you can imagine, even if you've employed a firm such as Dorset Connects, we're not up at 2 a.m. watching alerts for your company. We're in bed, sleeping just like you. But there are outsourced firms and which we subscribe to. So all of our plans include this SOC system, because we're that worried about our clients' data and our clients' network that we want to have a security operations center monitoring 24/7. And what happens is the SIM, the Security Information and Event Management, SIEM, it provides real-time analysis and monitoring, as well as the logging of that information. So the reason why the logging is important is because the events that happen are logged, and that helps us to find the source of the breach. The SOC is able to identify a system that's been compromised, and it can isolate that system in real time. So in other words, let's say you've got 10 or 15 computers on your network, and one of them gets compromised. Those alerts will trigger the SOC to isolate that machine so that it will not spread the infection beyond whatever machines were infected within the time that the alert came out. And that can be a huge advantage to protecting the rest of your systems. And the fact that they can do that 24/7, and we're not relying on an employee of a small company to sit there and watch it is a huge advantage. So these systems are not necessarily expensive. We include them with our plans, and we feel that strongly about how important it is. Also, there's compliance management. Now, compliance can be very different for every industry. You could be in the wealth management business, you might be in medical, you might be in construction. So which governing bodies are requiring you to comply with what regulations? That is something that hopefully someone in your business is paying attention to. You might find a million different things that's so overwhelming. This slide that I'm going to go through right now, I'm just going to zip right through it. I'm just going to list on some of these compliance requirements. NIST, PCI, credit card information, HIPAA, CMMC if you work for some parts of the government, GDPR if you collect data related to anyone in the European Union, you have to follow the GDPR requirements. Banking and financial services, insurance. All of these entities may have something that affect your business, and it's your responsibility to know what those are. If there's something, let's just call it HIPAA, just to pick one. HIPAA is information that a healthcare provider, it's medical information, and if you have your IT provider, for example, may have access to your computers and may by proxy have access to that HIPAA information. So we want to take steps to make sure that your other vendors, your other service providers are not accidentally being exposed to that HIPAA information. So we take additional steps to make sure that those screens, that information is not visible when work is being done on your system. And that's the kind of thing that you would protect against by making sure your screen is locked. When you leave your desk, if you leave your screen unlocked, that is a perfect opportunity for someone to come by and look at information that's on your computer. So just even locking your screen when you leave your desk is a big protection capability. So clearly not in a position to go over these types of things in detail today. If anyone has a question about any of these in particular. I'm certainly not an expert, but I can send you some contact information if you want. So here's some, this is a little bit more fun, a little bit less dry. Tips for staff. Practical tips. People are the weakest link. We have to recognize that we are our own worst enemy. So how do we keep ourselves from causing harm? Well, one of the things we do, by far the best defense, is the multi-factor authentication. If you don't know how to do that, get some help from whoever handles your IT. I'm sure that they can help you. I even recommend it for your Facebook account, your Gmail account. How many times have you seen people say on Facebook, "Hey, don't ignore any friend requests for me. My account was hacked." Well, if you put MFA on, it's unlikely that your account will be hacked. Another thing is, don't email passwords. You should not. And we as a policy at Dorset, we do not email passwords. We will text them to you, because if someone gets into your email and they see that password, they've got access. And remember, it may not be today or tomorrow but if you just save that email and 6 months from now and you didn't change your password, the bad guys from 6 months ago are going to see passwords to other systems. And you don't want to do that with your colleagues as well. I recommend, if you have to send passwords back and forth to colleagues, text it or put it on a piece of paper, but don't send it by email where it can be found by the bad guys. And here's a phishing example. So some typical header information. You see it's from Rob Sparry. It was sent on Monday, on June 13. It was sent to you at your company. And the text of the email is a picture of Rick when he had hair. So let's say you got a guy named Rick in the office, and this sounds like it would be really fun to see a picture of Rick when he had hair. But if you look closely, you can see that the domain name ends in .pk, which is Pakistan. So clearly my name was spoofed, but it's not really my email address. And security awareness training, your users need to be at least able to look at the basics of an email address and make an intelligent decision about whether this is an accurate address or if it's really coming from an email address that does not match the name. And then the other thing is, were you expecting this? If you really want to click that link, maybe you email back to the person and say, "Hey, did you mean to send me that picture, that link to that picture?" And then clarify that it really was intended. That's going to be a lot better than clicking on it and finding out that it really was a phishing attack. So in summary, security is a matter of balancing risk and reward and taking into account regulatory and other requirements. There are going to be easy and inexpensive steps that you can take with huge returns. We talked about MFA as being the biggest one. If you've got Office 365, adding the advanced threat protection on top it's a couple bucks a month. It's an excellent additional layer of security on top of your email and the links that come in to make sure that they are not really bad links. Let's see what else we've got. There's some security tools that you can add for your specific situation. If you have questions, I'd be glad to answer that for your specific business. Get out, know where your systems need improvement. And that's where you might have your IT person, let's start making a list. And if you're not sure of where those improvement capabilities are, then maybe it's time to engage an hour or two with a professional to get that information and get that outside help when it's needed. It doesn't have to be a long, expensive thing, but even if it's just a 2 or a 4 hour engagement with your IT person or your IT company to take a review, do a discovery, and have a conversation and see where the low-hanging fruit is to make those improvements. And finally, being aware of your compliance and reporting requirements. That might be something that you ask your insurance company about, liability insurance carrier or cyber insurance carrier. If you've got anyone in government that you have a relationship with. You might ask them, and obviously you can just go Google, what security requirements, what compliance requirements are required for my industry. And that is all I have. If you've got specific questions after this is over, you can always email me at robert.sparry@dorsetconnects.com. That .co at the end is a typo. It's kind of on purpose to see if you're paying attention. So with that, Elise, that's all I have. Any questions I can go into for you?
No, so personally, I want to just thank you because this is a very important topic. And as you're going through it, I understand that there are a lot of small companies that have limited budgets and resources. And I feel like you gave a lot of practical tips for how their staff can really be proactive in helping the company protect its data. And if anyone who is watching, if you do have a question for Robert, feel free to throw it right into the comments. And I'm going to make sure that you guys have Robert's appropriate email address too. So I'm going to make sure you guys have that in the comments as well. And I suggest anyone who's following to also go on LinkedIn, follow Robert, follow up with Robert via email or LinkedIn to get your questions answered, because this is a really important topic. And I feel like I see a lot of vulnerabilities that I know we're doing. And even on my personal self, I'm horrible at making sure that my phone is up to date and my computer's up to date with all of the latest patches.
And it's not hard to improve your posture. Your security posture is really easy to improve if you just did those two things. If you just updated your apps on your cell phone and made sure that your computer patches were up to date. Even better if you have a professional making sure that your computer patches are up to date. That way you at least close that window. Obviously there are other windows that are open, but the more windows you can close, the better it is for all of us.
And Robert, before we just jump off, so you're a member of the Newcastle County Chamber, which is how we got connected. And I think it's really important that you're helping the small business community stay protected. So how long have you been in this field?
Well, I started at Delmarva in 1984, and I was at Delmarva Power. I was the third person in the networking department at Delmarva Power and put in their first email system, local area network. They were all mainframes and terminals when I first started. And so I was just there at the right time. The PC had just come out in late 1983. So I was just there when the whole thing started. It was just serendipitous. The timing couldn't have been better. And I was there for 10 years. I loved my job. I absolutely loved it. But I'm not really a corporate person. I didn't want to go into corporate management. And I decided to get into IT consulting. And I remain good friends with Delmarva people today. And I did a lot of work for them the first 5 years of my company that I started in 1997. I have 22 employees today. We used to be members of the Newcastle County Chamber early on. And we had someone named Amy Eschenbrenner, who was Ambassador of the Year, like every year in a row. Year after year. But she unfortunately passed away several years ago. But she was a great chamber enthusiast. And I lost the bandwidth to be able to do the chamber events and whatnot. But now we've kind of come full circle, and I've got some people taking over my operational duties so that I can be a little bit more involved in the community and in membership organizations like the chamber again.
Which I feel like is where you kind of come with your empathy to companies who are really trying to do all of the right things to protect themselves, but you have bandwidth and resource and staffing and all of the pieces that small businesses are focused on. So it's really wonderful that you're taking the time to just share your knowledge and your expertise, and also help guide these businesses to a company that they can go to learn more about making sure they're being secure in all of their data needs. So thank you so much.
Very good. All right, Elise, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us. And I look forward to hearing from anyone with any questions. All
right. I threw your information into the chat or into the comments. And I also made sure people can follow up with you via email and LinkedIn. So thank you so much.
Okay, Lise, take care, everyone.
Thank you.